Welcome all of you. I really feel this is it's kind of party time right now. This is really a celebration of everything that's right in this world. We have really an awful lot to be optimistic about in looking at some of these submitted designs. So the schedule is I'm going to talk a little bit about the design competition and a little bit about the story about how this got started. And then Scott Vanderkoy is going to talk a little bit about Comprenew Environmental and their mission and what they do. And then Rick is going to keep us all riveted to our seats with a talk a little bit later on. And hopefully, as we get us all revved up to go back out there and slay the dragons. I can't start this program without expressing our deep gratitude to our sponsors, the Wege Foundation, Hayworth, Turner Construction Company, CSM Group, and Triangle Associates. They've made this event possible, and thank you very much. As a nonprofit, this is what keeps us alive, and we really are very appreciative. Also, a lot of volunteers to put this together. And for the design competition, we've been working on this almost a year to bring this to you. And so I will quickly go through the committee, our committee members that were working on this. With me was Laura Rawerda from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, Janine Reynolds from the Alliance for Environmental Sustainability, Linnell Shooks from Comprenew Environmental. She came on and helped push us along. Renee Hesselink, Nichols Paper and Supply. Dave Bell, GMB Architects and Engineers. Matt Rigler from the Architectural Group. Linda Fry, Aquinas College student. And then we had help also from First Companies, Brian Newhoff, and Dixon Architecture. And we certainly appreciate all of the many hours that they put into making this event come together. We had, when we first started out, we contacted all of the design universities in the state of Michigan to get involved in this design competition. And there were, I think, 14 of them that we went out and talked to and invited to participate, 8 of whom responded and have entries in this competition. And the competition is about a real place. This is something that's really going to happen. There's a business, Comprenew, which became our client, our victim for the students. And what's really cool about them is that their mission is really one of sustainability, and they're really kind of a poster child for a triple bottom line business standards. Those 8 schools fielded, what do we have, 17 teams. 2 of those 17 were individuals that submitted an entry. And they each had 10 weeks to work on the project. From the time that they received all of their documentation, they got 10 weeks, and when the end of that 10 weeks came up, Janine would call them up and they brought them in. So everybody had, it was a little more complicated than that. I'm not giving you enough credit. I'm sorry. A little sweat and blood there. And so here we are tonight, and what really an exciting thing. So I want to tell you a little bit about how we ended up here, and it has a lot to do really with Peter Wege. And I had hoped he could be here tonight. But at 87 years old, he can be anywhere he wants to be. We're very grateful to Peter, certainly in this community, because he's done an awful lot for sustainability and environmentalism since the 40s. He's really been a groundbreaker and a great supporter of just about every green project there is in this town, and we owe him a great debt. And a few years ago, I got involved with him and the Wege Foundation in designing a new center, and as part of that, education is a very important thing to him. As part of that project, we tried to develop an educational program around that. And we enlisted the Aquinas College students and Kendall College students to get together and develop something around this project that was really cool that would help educate the students. And I had so much fun. Wow, that was a ball. And even though the project never finished up, that really meant so much to me to be a part of that. The energy that we got from the kids was just phenomenal. And I had hoped that sometime in my lifetime I'd be able to replicate that. When I saw that the U.S. Green Building Council had a national competition, I couldn't wait to get started. And so we're really, absolutely thrilled to be able to do all of this, not only for the kids, but certainly for Comprenew. Partly, we wanted to be able to provide a talent pool to find people that were turned on and passionate about green design from the colleges, so that our members, the architects and engineers and contractors that are drawing from that pool, would be able to network with some of these kids, and by the same token that these kids could see what's going on out there in the real world and hopefully have an opportunity to hook up with a potential employer. And so as you can see, a lot of great energy can come out of this event. The one thing that we might do differently is try not to schedule this event during exams. And I hope really that we can bring a lot more of the students in, and that'll be a lot of fun. This slide up here, I'm going to tell you a little story about this, because this is kind of my personal journey to sustainability. My grandfather was the marketing director of the Kalamazoo Vegetable Parchment Company. And it was on the banks of the Kalamazoo River in Parchment, Michigan. And he was an avid outdoorsman and considered himself an environmentalist as well. And this was way back before environmental was cool. And I remember when I was a wee lad going on a walk with him and looking down over a bridge into the Kalamazoo River, and what I saw, it is crystal clear in my brain today, and even though I'm over 50 and it shouldn't be, it stays there, of what looked like oatmeal flowing under the bridge. And that was it. The whole Kalamazoo was founded on the paper industry, and it was still big business then. And it was really, I was too young for it to have any push on me in any particular direction at the time, but that image really did stick with me. And so what my father told me stories of the days down there after the spring floods, when the waters receded. The pulp left over from that was going down the river would end up on all of the football fields that were down in the floodplains. And the football team would actually have to roll up. He said these rolls of paper were 6 feet tall by the time they got to the other end. He said that was part of the training, was rolling around these big rolls of paper. And all of that was effluent from the paper plants. And we have come a long way. It's not that way anymore. The aquatic species have returned, and even though all of us in this room know that we have a long way to go, it's good forward progress. And I highlight that because I hope that our efforts are not seen by our grandchildren. My grandfather's understanding of environmentalism was oatmeal flowing down the Kalamazoo River. And I hope that our children look at what we've done and don't have the same image. Okay, I think we're better than that. And I really hope that the students that are in this contest, when they're my age, are not thinking back at what we did and say, boy, they really didn't get it at all. I think we do. And I hope that we have a really great opportunity now for these kids to really get launched into the business world, really knowing how to put this together. So I'm very excited about that. These slides were part of a a calendar that my grandfather handed out as freebies. In fact, they date from the 40s and 50s. Oops. Well, let's try this. This was one that I liked. These were on the walls in the basement rec room. By the way, he had a shooting range in his basement with a Kentucky long rifle, and we used to shoot down there in his basement. And these are just kind of images of my childhood. It took me years to figure out what this really meant. This is a favorite of mine. I'll give you a minute to read it. You might have figured out that he was a marketing guy. But this is the one that has really stuck with me all my life. And I was probably 40 before I ever stopped to think about why this was important to me. And I really hope that all of you can take what you learned tonight and what you see on these exhibits around you and take this home with you and keep your corner clean. What we're going to do is Scott Vanderkoy is going to come up and talk a little bit about Comprenew, and then we'll let Rick come up and we'll introduce him. Scott, thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Sam. You know, Linnell Shooks gave me a pretty detailed list of everybody I was supposed to thank, but I think Sam did a pretty good job of that. The one name I didn't hear, though, was Sam Popst. I'm sorry, Sam Popst. Maybe a Freudian slip there. But
if there's a fortune there, I'll go with it.
Sam, we want to thank you. You were very, very influential in this process and certainly a big part of it, so we want to thank you as well. We didn't hear your name before, but why don't we all clap for Sam? This is a pretty neat day for us. I mean, USGBC feeds us all day long, and then at the end of the day, we get these great presents. I think if you're with Comprenew Environmental, that's certainly how you feel today. I just have a few things to say, and the biggest thing I want to say to all the teams that participated, and certainly the U.S. Green Building Council, both at the national level and locally, is a big, huge thank you. The value that a nonprofit organization like Comprenew Environmental receives through a contest like this is really priceless. Because it does a couple things. First of all, it gives us ideas and plans that we wouldn't be able to come up with on our own. And secondly, it connects us with this community more, which is part of our reason for existing. I want to tell you a little bit about us, and then hopefully what you learn about the organization you have supported through your efforts here will help encourage you next year and the year after that. Comprenew Environmental is owned by a 20-year-old nonprofit organization by the name of Worldwide Christian Schools. Right away, when you hear the term Christian schools, if you're like most people, you think of a certain image. Maybe you think of, if you're like most Americans, you think of upper-class white school down the street. That's not who we are. We work very hard at placing schools, working alongside with indigenous people around the world, primarily where no other schools exist. There are about 250 million kids in the world today that don't have access to education. Now imagine that, 250 million kids that simply do not have the ability to go to a school because one does not exist around their area. Worldwide's emphasis is to work with indigenous people to put a school there. Now, we've been tracking for some time what happens when a school enters an area, particularly an area that is quite isolated. And it's pretty remarkable what happens when education enters the scene. One of the things that happens is the environment quality goes up. As you can imagine, the economic strength of the community goes up. We often talk about the ripple effect of education. And one of the things we concentrate a lot on are training of teachers, the indigenous teachers who teach in these schools that we're involved in. The reason we like to do that is because there's this huge ripple effect. You train a teacher, and then that teacher can train other teachers who train children. That's pretty important to us, and it gives a great return on our donors' investment. Now I want to bring it home to you and Comprenew Environmental. Comprenew Environmental is, like I said, a division of Worldwide Christian Schools, but Comprenew Environmental is located in the center of Grand Rapids. And what we hope to achieve through Comprenew Environmental are a couple things. First of all, as a faith-based organization, we do believe there's a God, and we believe that that God created this world. We believe people of faith ought to lead the environmental movement. We believe that very, very strongly. People of faith ought to lead the environmental movement. It's a stewardship issue. For some of us that have been raised in a church, one of the things we've learned is that there are two ways to know God. One is through the Bible, if you're a Christian. The other is through creation. So as an educational enterprise that's faith-based, one of the best ways we can teach is through creation, is through sharing the creation story to kids, through explaining how it works. So Comprenew Environmental, and the purpose of Comprenew Environmental is certainly not to preach at kids. It's to be an after-school, high school program, after school and summer high school program for inner city kids. We work very closely with a number of local institutions. One of them is Grand Rapids Public Schools. Secondly, we work with Aquinas College. Aquinas teaches the business sustainability program for us, and that's a very important component of Comprenew Environmental. Secondly, we work with Calvin College. Calvin helps us out on the IT side of things and teaches kids some IT principles. Grand Valley has been very instrumental in our program as well. We hope over time to involve other institutions of higher learning as well. So this is definitely a collaborative effort located in Grand Rapids. Certainly stretches the boundaries of faith and public institutions. We think that's an important thing to do, and we think this community needs to see more of that. Let's talk a little bit about what this event means for Comprenew Environmental and really our world that we live in. We've often spoke about the fact that we would like this building and every surface that's a part of this building to be a teaching tool. A tool that teaches kids about sustainability, about business sustainability. This facility will be a tool that teaches teachers about school sustainability. I don't need to tell you, whether you look at private or public schools, that the models that we're using for schooling today is kind of broken. We don't know that we have the answer, but we think we have a piece of the answer. And we think working together, we'll be able to create truly sustainable schools and spread them around the world. And we think that's pretty important, not only here in Grand Rapids, but elsewhere. There is a huge educational divide in our world, and schools can directly impact that educational divide. So I guess when I look at the teams involved, I want to encourage you, and I want you to know that the work you have done means an awful lot to Grand Rapids, Michigan, but it will also mean an awful lot to schools throughout, because there's a story involved in that facility now, and that story will be spread every time Comprenew Environmental or Worldwide is involved in teacher training throughout the world. and that happens about 20 times a year in various parts of the world. There's a story that you are now a part of. And that story is sustainability works. And it doesn't matter if you're a one-room schoolhouse or a supportive business or a business down the street, sustainability works. And your activity here and your support here, whether you're a sponsor or somebody working at the chapter level, really will have a tremendous impact. So we just want to say a big thank you to all of you. Linnell Shooks, I want to just highlight you again and thank you for all you have done for our team as well as USGBC. And we're really excited about this, really a new chapter. And we want to thank you, because without you, we would not have been introduced to this wonderful world. So thank you very much. USGBC, thank you very much. Sam, thank you very much. And have a great night.
USGBC rocks. Well, I'm going to introduce Rick, and this morning I introduced him to our lunchtime crowd, and some of you were there, and I got a little bit heavy-handed, didn't I? Frankly, it's because I'm in absolute awe of what this man has accomplished. This has created really another industrial revolution. This is, I've not heard anybody else call it, but I will call it a green revolution. And it is going to completely change everything that we do and know and say about the environment, and certainly the built environment. I took Rick this afternoon out to Hayworth to introduce him to the Lead CI class, because we double booked our events. And Rick was introduced as the Grand Poobah of the U.S. Green Building Council. And so I would like to introduce the Grand Poobah of the U.S. Green Building Council, Rick Fabrizi.
It's a good thing I don't know what poobah means, or else I probably would have a problem with that, Sam. But anyway, I'm going to try to get my slide presentation up here. It'll just take a second. I think I can do this. You might even... There we go. Might even think I know what I'm doing. Wow, thank you. This is great. I am really happy to be here. I'm hoping my energy level lasts a little bit longer so I can give those that didn't hear me today, some, I think, valuable information. I'm going to start by saying anyone who heard me speak today that wants to try to escape now, go for the door now, because in a few seconds, there's going right now. I just saw her. She ran. This is phenomenal. The best part of my job is being able to spend time all over the country and around the world with people that are making an important difference at every level and in every different discipline through what we started as the building industry. When David Gottfried, the founder of the USGBC, who had the big idea, thought that we could. He told me on day one, by the way, that we will change the world, and I thought he was nuts. I didn't think any one person could do that. But David's vision and his passion was enough to transform a small group around him. I was one of those. And hopefully we've been able to just keep transforming small groups around us, and so on, and so on, and so on. And I think what we're finding now is we've got some very important opportunities in front of us. And as you just heard from Scott, these opportunities are extending beyond the footprint of the building. They're extending into education and social awareness and people's lives in a way that we could have only dreamed that we would somehow be connected. So this is really important stuff. We're coming together at one of the most important times ever, and a lot of that has to do with the kind of change we experience day to day. There are some very scary things going on out there right now, and I'm going to alert you to a few of them, things that we see every day. And then I promise you that by the end of the presentation, we will have some suggested solutions on how we dig ourselves out of the mess we're in right now. But I think it's important to realize one example, for instance, is we are currently living beyond peak oil. And this is something, I guess, well, certainly some of the lobbyists never wanted us to believe that we would reach a point that we were living beyond our means from an energy perspective, but we are. And so what's happening is our government is taking the oil and in ways that we will never see, the cost is being reduced. We think we're paying high prices now. If you put the real cost of oil and the refinement to gasoline together, whether it's for home heating or driving our vehicles, we would be paying probably a price that was 4 or 5 times more than what we're seeing at the gas pump. So I do chuckle when I see people screaming about $3.25 a gallon, because it could be $20 a gallon, and it probably still would not represent the environmental degradation, the human costs associated with it, and everything that we need to know. Part of this journey is that we allow ourselves the ability to learn about the new things that are changing every day, the issues of climate change, the new language associated with that, issues about human health and productivity and all of the things that green building brings us to. But certainly understanding where we fit in this oil dilemma is one thing. Another thing is more people are moving to cities than any other time in human history. There is a massive move in India and China of people moving from rural areas into cities. And all those cities are dramatically better as far as a sustainable design model than sprawl or millions and millions of people just moving further and further out into the unpopulated areas. When you get that many people that quickly moving to cities without the proper infrastructure of travel and water and toxic waste removal and all of the inherent problems that could be associated with it, we have some frightening things in front of us. For the first time in human history, 50% of the world's population will find itself without clean sources of drinking water. And no matter what we think about, how hard it is to get, gasoline under $4 a gallon, finding water that would probably be the same price or more, just to be able to survive as a human species, we need water. If we needed to pay that kind of money for the water that we are going to be someday maybe faced with that reality. Certainly if you go to any airport in the United States, you're faced with that reality today. I mean, this is about $2.95 in O'Hare, and it's actually, when you think of it, cheaper than a gallon of refined gasoline. Something's wrong. There's an imbalance there. But this is a very sad scenario, because where it will happen first is third world countries to the poorest people. They're the ones that won't have the water. They're the ones that won't have the security. They're the ones that are affected immediately, and we get to either choose to look at it on the evening news and say, gee, we really feel bad about that, or we need to do something about it. And hopefully we all choose to do something about it. This one has me scared to death. This is one, based on, we hear these arguments today about biofuels. It's like, corn, grow corn, let's grow our fuel, and now we can, fill our SUVs with biofuel and still have the American dream. But, the interesting thing is, if we have to decide between growing food and fuel, growing food for fuel, or growing food for food, what scares me about that is the fact that for so long, the United States has done some very dramatic work around the world in feeding countries that didn't have adequate food supplies or had some kind of dramatic drought or some horrific conditions that they could not, easily feed themselves. Now, if we have a choice and left to some people's discretion, they may decide it would be more important to fill, an SUV with biofuel diesel rather than to have the excess grain that we might ship offshore to people that were in desperate need of it. So these are dilemmas and things that I think we need to be aware of, and we need to start to focus on these ideas as we learn more about what role we can play in it. If you look at the oceans right now, they are dwindling sadly. Coral reefs and fish food supplies, they're predicting by the year 2048 will be 10% of the 1950 levels. So, my sick side says, get your sushi while you can. And the other side of me says, dear God, what have we done? When you start and realize, of course, a large part of the Earth's population is fed by the oceans. We have our beef and our other things in the United States that we, our chicken certainly, but the fishing industry and what that can bring to the rest of the world is huge. And these are scientists that are making these claims year after year, just looking at the availability of fish. It's a very scary scenario. And certainly, for the first time in human history, we've had the 6 hottest summers on record all in one decade. And certainly that's produced images like this that we're almost to the point now where we're like, oh, Katrina, okay, and you want to flip the page. Well, Katrina means one thing to us in the United States, but in other parts of the world, climate change equals drought. I just came back from Australia, and they are in their 9th year of severe drought. It's against the law in Australia to wash your car or water your lawn, and it's not a fine. You don't get $25 slap on the wrist. You go to jail. It's very, very serious there right now. If you do want to wash your car, it's going to cost you about $60. So maybe that's a good example of people that for the first time realize my car doesn't have to be that clean, and maybe I don't have to use my car, and that way I won't care if it's that clean, and the debate changes. But we have to remember climate change is something that it's not just about warmer winters, because living in Syracuse, New York, and in the middle of winter on weekends as I do, I can tell you it's not too warm. And I love running into people and they're like, there's no climate change, it's 20 below zero, But it's these dramatic weather patterns that change all over the world and end up, causing severe drought in places that have experienced drought before, but never in this continuous pattern. And we have experienced storms before, but never in this series of highly intensive storms with other things involved. Come on in and sit down, please. These are the images we're used to seeing, and this is what our scientists and some of the lobbyists that support information that gets fed up to our federal government. For years we'd look at these reports and they'd say, "Oh, that's a great graph," and yeah, it looks like after the invention of the steam engine, which is that to the right, it's the second to the left bar, vertical bar. And after the invention of the steam engine, certainly CO2 levels and Earth's surface temperatures went up. But, that's happened all throughout history, and there's a variety of different things. These scientific reports are what the scientists love to dispute, one to the other. I believe you, I don't believe you. What you can't dispute is stuff like this. When you start looking at actual scenes of devastated communities, it means we have to learn more about what we know. Certainly the insurance industry, not known for their warmth, have come a long way recently to tell us that they're changing their complete story. They have for years decided that, that climate change and environmentalism and all these things were kind of nice to do, but it wasn't really necessary. But right now, with Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Rita, 2 storms in one summer, it cost them $75 billion. And when you take business like that and you realize they can't sustain 2 years of that back to back, the insurance industry would collapse, and so too would probably the current way of life that we all have. So Hurricane Katrina and Rita got the attention of those folks. And if I had to show you 2 slides tonight, just 2, it would be these. First of all, this is the storms that were 20 years ago to 10 years ago. And in the orange, it's storms that were 10 years ago to the time of Hurricane Katrina, just a couple of summers ago, or a summer and a half ago. But if you look at those lines, those are actual named storms by NOAA and the Oceanographic Atmospheric Institute. And where you see the line go from a thin line to a fat line, that's when it went from a Category 3 to Category 5 storm, and that was the intensity of that Category 3 to 5 storm time period. So those are 20 years ago to 10 years ago. Let's talk about what happened just in the last 10 years. Now, if you look at what happened in the last 10 years, every one of those lines has a name. We always chuckle when Hurricane, Alberto or some crazy name shows up. Oh my God, there's another one. But look at the intensity from turning from a Category 2 to Category 3 to 5 storm, and look at how many there are. So the intensity increased, the numbers increased, and that dark black line you see over to the left there is Hurricane Katrina. So there is more than scientific proof that says something has changed in our atmosphere, something is going to change our way of life as we know it. We have to, at one point or another, recognize that change and start to address this in our work, in our personal habits and consumption practices, and anything that we can do in a positive sense. And I have to tell you, the U.S. Green Building Council was founded on one principle, and that was to create a safe place for business and environmentalists to coexist. And in doing so, the idea was that you would preserve corporations and industrial practices and everyone's ability to make money. Because at the end of the day, we want to be successful. We want to take care of our families. We want to send our kids to great colleges. We want to do really good work in our life. And at the same time, if the environmental community and the industrial business community are together, we have maybe for the first time ever a collaboration on a way forward. Certainly in Paul Hawken's book, The Ecology of Commerce in 1992, that was one of the main premises of the book. That when he said that it's great, people don't believe it, but you can be a capitalist and an environmentalist. And if you converge those two roads effectively, you may in fact find a way out of all this. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to find the way out of all of this. Each of us produces carbon and CO2 to the Earth's atmosphere. I don't know the science, probably personally as well, but certainly in our purchasing and consumption practices and what we drive and how we travel and all of that. We add another 15 tons for the kinds of things that we procure, the kind of clothing we buy, or the kind of trips that we take, or things that are above and beyond normal living practice. Total carbon on average contributed by most individuals is about 24 or 25 tons. Now, to some of us, you really start to ask, well, what's a ton of carbon look like? Is it bigger than a bread box? Is it like real small and real heavy? Is it big? Is it the size of this room? What is it? And I have to tell you, you ask 3 or 4 people, you get 3 or 4 different answers. The bottom line is it is a measurement of CO2 gas released that trapped in the Earth's atmosphere causes a number of problems, as I've mentioned already. What we're going to find out in the years ahead, over the next 4 to 5 years, I guarantee everyone in this room will become an expert or learn the new language of carbon, the carbon economy, CO2. Our taxes will probably be generating some kind of reference to carbon. Whether it's a tax paid for an activity or in our income taxes as a federal penalty for something that probably our federal government should have started a long time ago, ultimately it will all come back to us in one way or another. And you know what? That's okay as long as we start the ball rolling sooner or later. But what has to happen is we have to first learn the language. And it's a tough one. There's a lot going on in this new arena. I mean, you look at the United States, and obviously this picture's been, coded to show you the entire United States in darkness. But we have a tremendous thirst for energy as a nation. And it's something that if we're going to really solve this problem, it's got to be a global solution. This isn't just the United States getting its act together, because I have to tell you, everyone in this room and everybody in the entire United States could buy 100% renewable energy, drive a Prius, and put compact fluorescents in every fixture we own. And if, in fact, we don't get India and China to come on board right now, while they're in their upward emerging growth market, we're probably going to have a very bad end solution. We have, right now in India, 20 billion square feet is being built out every year in their market, and about 15 million Chinese nationals are moving from the rural areas into cities. That's 2 cities the size of New York City every year popping up. What's fueling that growth is consumption. A lot of it is based on our purchasing habits and others around the world. China's ability to produce and India's ability to produce very low-cost, high-quality goods. And trust me, the quality is getting better and better and better. When you start seeing that those lights, you can make out India there. Right to the right of that is China. Japan has always been a very bright country. But when you start looking at the fact that India and China, 4 years ago, this is a slide from a year ago, 4 years ago, that would have probably had 10% of the lights you see today from space. That means that they've had this dramatic upward swing in energy use and consumption. I spoke at a conference in Beijing just 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago. I don't know if the date's on there. I'm confused. I don't know what time zone I'm in anymore. But the good news about all this, and why I don't have pessimism, is because the Ministry of Construction, a gentleman named Qiu Baozheng, formed, he's been working on this for 3 years, but the China Green Building Council formed when I was there. And in Chinese, the word consensus doesn't translate very easily. But what they did do is they've formed the board of directors from every university in China. The heads of the university are making up the board of directors of the China Green Building Council. I found that is a very positive step forward, that the people that are responsible for teaching the youth of China the important steps relative to green building development, certainly all the environmental regulations and elements of economic prosperity, all those things tying together, those folks are now going to lead the formation of the council throughout the country of China. So it was a very positive move. They have 24 LEED buildings in China right now, and every day are registering more. There are other programs. They could use the BREEAM program from the UK. They could use the Australian equivalent program called Green Star. They like LEED, and they like the program, and they really want LEED tomorrow. If the U.S. Green Building Council decided to do the certifications for China tomorrow, we would probably sink. So we are actively trying to figure out a way that we can support them in that effort, because it is very important for us to do it. One of the things, along with increased urbanization and certainly the growth of it, right now 21 megacities. Megacities are cities like Los Angeles and New York City. Is the fact that they are looking very strongly at selling goods to the United States. And certainly there's a number of goods that we've purchased from the Chinese for years. One of the things they want to sell us very quickly is automobiles. And I have to tell you, those automobiles are going to be hybrid electric vehicles. They're going to get 60 to 100 miles per gallon. They're going to be about $12,000 delivered cost to the buyer in the U.S., and they're probably going to be some of the best quality we've ever seen, because they are listening to what consumers like us want, and they are monitoring what's on the horizon as far as a future without the ability for all of us to just keep, blindly burning fossil fuels for energy and for excessive performance in our vehicles. And they're going to send a message. Unfortunately, it will take them sending a message to the U.S. manufacturers so that we will, ultimately see an entire fleet of vehicles across the United States and around the world decreasing in size. Bless you, John. James Hansen, a NASA scientist, basically gave this away as far as an important discussion. With the Chinese and India markets increasing as dramatically as they are, will come a massive need for energy to fuel that growth. And realize what's fueling that growth. The Chinese want what we have had for a century. They want all of the luxuries. They want, individual homes. They want air conditioners and flat screen televisions and automobiles. They want, big freeways in order to be able to get from point A to point B in 20 minutes versus, 3 or 4 hours on a bicycle. They want the things that we have. And far be it from us to say you should not have that. We can't say that to anyone, because they are working hard to develop their own economic engine so that they can do what they want for their country and their people and their future. But what we have to do, and anything that we can do to help transfer in real time information on technology, information on economic models and finance opportunities, information on anything that we have to give to the Chinese and to the Indian cultures immediately so that we can see some positive results. To fuel that consumption that we are seeing right now, by the year 2030, most of the scientists, including Dr. Hansen, predict that we're going to need about 276 quads of energy. Quad is a quadrillion BTUs. I have no idea how many zeros that is. I just know it's a lot of zeros. And when you consider that one quad equals 40 new coal-burning power plants, 276 equals 11,000. And 11,000 coal-burning power plants is going to add CO2 to the atmosphere a lot more than we've got today. And when you add 60% more CO2 to the atmosphere and we don't have a meaningful solution to get rid of it, which I know a lot of scientists and people are talking about today, trying to figure out the science behind that. If we don't have some way to offset that, then we're in trouble. We know what buildings use and what they contribute to the environmental degradation. We know that the building sector is the single largest contributor to CO2. A lot of people think it's automobiles. It's not. It's buildings. Buildings contribute more CO2 than any other sector. This is residential, commercial, industrial processes, using electricity, burning fossil fuels to develop the electricity, and so forth. And the green building story does some really great stuff. It returns a lot of what is usually wasted back to the equation. And certainly CO2, on average, green buildings can return about 40% of the CO2 that would have been generated and delivered into the atmosphere. So that's why the U.S. Green Building Council is working so feverishly with the Chinese government right now. The Indian government, by the way, has had a Green Building Council for about 3 years, and they license LEED from the U.S. Green Building Council. So they have in India right now probably 17 LEED buildings, and I actually think they have more LEED Platinum buildings than any other country in the world. So we have to catch up a little bit and get some things going there. But we have a solution, and understanding how we transfer that information immediately to them so that we see some significant return on investment, the investment being our future, is a really important thing. Now, the U.S. Green Building Council, the reason why I feel so, and I'm a little bit tired right now, but I am not losing hope, and I am absolutely thrilled at our potential to survive here, because the building industry and the U.S. Green Building Council, the reason why we're successful is it's all of you. It's individually every part of the built environment that's come together with a common purpose of creating strong businesses in their communities, with building better buildings that use less, provide better environments for humans, whether it's health or productivity, whatever it may be. There's a great story there and a great way forward. We have grown exponentially, and I will say in the last 2 months, something dramatic has happened. The month of February and the month of March, February and March, we grew both months in excess of 500 new member organizations. So in 2 months, over 1,000 new members. So this slide, 8,200, was wrong before that. So we have probably in excess of 9,000 members right now. And these are member organizations. These are corporations, companies, state and local governments, insurance and financial institutions, and universities, and hospitals, and so on and so on. In that group of 1,000 that just joined, Marriott, McDonald's, General Electric, a bunch of other large insurance companies, all have waited on the fence long enough and realized, yeah, I need to get involved now. Our corporation will be disadvantaged if we don't know how to, number one, run our buildings, manage our real estate properly, and number two, if we are part of the building industry, then we have to understand the new emerging markets so that we are not left behind in that realm. We have somewhere between 37 and 40,000 LEED accredited professionals today, and there's 25 to 35 people every business day taking the exam. So it is a groundswell of interest. Not, again, I mean, the early adopters were the architects, the engineers, the design community. Those are the early adopters. Right now, taking the exam are our financial and insurance executives, our schoolroom, K through 12 school teachers. I mentioned this morning veterinarians. Every conceivable part of the real estate food chain and manufacturers that feed that area, everyone is starting to say, I need to better understand this. Number one, probably to protect my business and to grow our future. Number two, I don't want to not understand this information relative to what my role in reducing some of this can be. And so it's a really important journey that people take to get to the point where they can get there. 70 chapters around the United States right now. Our chapters are, in fact, the front door to the U.S. Green Building Council and this movement. And you're very lucky to be in a vibrant area like Grand Rapids, and certainly the Michigan chapter here is just an amazing contributor to what we do nationally. We learn through the local level chapters on every level, so it's a really great relationship. We affect about 92,000 people every year, as far as these are people that actually come to our conferences, take our workshops, are on the phone with us, are working through a lead project, certification, whatever. And we have probably just many, many millions of people that are indirectly associated with us through their companies. We have a variety of different ways that we get to these audiences, talking to them through federal summits, NGO briefings, talking to other environmental groups about how we can work more effectively together. Certainly the Emerging Green Builder Program, I mean, I have to tell you, the students that are part of that effort and part of the under 53. So, but it is exciting to see the kind of effort we have. We have member circles for different kinds of organizations that want to band together to find out what they can do more dramatically on one subject or another. Certainly, we do the same with CEOs and the Green Building. Are using the LEED rating system for the way they manage their portfolios in the federal government. And that's why I draw a line between, the highest level of the federal government that did not use its time Seattle, Grand Rapids, and I swear I did not put this slide in here. Yes, I did not put this slide in here just to impress you. I use this slide in every speech I do, and that is because your mayor, Keith, brought me to see your mayor, George Hartwell, about a year and a half ago, and he was so proud. He said, "I want you to know, Rick, we've got more LEED buildings than any other city in America." And then under his breath he went, "Per capita." And I actually tell that story to everyone, and they love it. But I love it to get that competitive spirit out there, because our public leaders and all of us should be competing with everyone to out-green everyone. And if we all try to out-green everyone, we are going to get some shade of green that's going to be really, really beautiful. That's the way I look at it, and I think we have a chance. State of California, Governor Schwarzenegger is very green. We've seen him on Newsweek. We've seen all these tremendous things that he's doing, and we have to give his wife, Maria, a lot of credit, because his wife is really directing his environmental activities. And this isn't my assumption. I know people that know people in Los Angeles who know them. And Maria is a very dedicated environmentalist, and she is making sure that California will be one of the greenest states in the country. And I think that's great, because I think we all, at one time or another, have a partner or a spouse behind us that ends up kind of picking up when we get tired, they pick up the heavy lifting, and then we kind of share that when we get stronger. So it's a real important thing for all of us. Nevada has some tax incentive programs as well relative to that. So we have this ability now. We have an agenda. And we know essentially that we have to create this formation of the agenda and feed it to different groups that really don't understand it and collaborate with others and then lead this market transformation. And since I've been working in this, I've always believed in collaboration as a way forward. And I call it the grizzly bear effect, because not one organization, NGO, corporation, PTA, chapter, not one of us is going to manage this kind of market transformation to the problems that we've got today alone. But if we do this kind of thing individually and then we link arms and grow, we kind of form our own fabric or DNA pattern all by itself. We grow in strength, we grow in numbers. Paul Hawken, who is one of my favorite authors, who wrote The Ecology of Commerce and Natural Capitalism, the new book that he's going to introduce at Greenbuild is called Blessed Unrest. And it is really a very interesting premise. He's done a lot of research over the last 10 years about NGOs in particular, and all of the passion, commitment, drive, volunteer hours, and just this kind of like almost surreal effect that each of those groups, and he's identified hundreds of thousands of these groups around the world. He actually has a slide that he scrolls, and you may have seen that at Greenbuild when he spoke a couple of years ago. It's from this book that he was introducing. But he could scroll that slide with every name of every NGO that's doing work around the world, not just environmental, but from a human health perspective, from spiritual perspective, and all of these groups. And he said it would take 14 days at a normal pace to end the entire cycle. That's how many names are on there. And what his premise is that these groups mimic more a religion than they do anything else. They are not a movement. They are not a short-term blip on the screen. These are folks that have been committed to causes and change for a very long time. There is nothing that's going to deviate them from their beliefs and their passion in this area. And I love the association, with faith-based organizations taking lead and understanding that these are values that all of us, whether we are a religion, or we are an NGO, or we are a family, whatever it is, that those values kind of spread across each other. And we can take that same commitment that we experience in church or a synagogue every week, and we can take that commitment into our work and our passion of what we're trying to accomplish here for what we really should be doing, and that is preserving a better world for our kids. And you hear people say that all the time, and when people misuse that, it sounds trite. But I have to tell you, the term "better world" for our kids is really becoming more survival for our kids. And looking at what stands in front of us it's a big job. We all have a role to play in it. Certainly collaborations, we're doing collaborations with ASHRAE on a baseline standard for Green Building Standard 189. We're collaborating with BOMA, the Building Owners and Managers Association, to get a better handle on the existing building stock, which is, that is the biggest single contributor to CO2 in all of those numbers I showed you. So we've got to get a good handle on the existing building stock. We're working with ASID on baseline education for homeowners, so that they can have an idea of how they could, this is not going to be a lead standard, but we want to teach them how you can fit out your interior space in your home, and we're doing this in conjunction with ASID. And then we've got partnerships with individual companies, like PNC, that is taking, this is a bank, they did their headquarters, that wasn't good enough. Now they're doing all of their bank branches, and they're trying to take that commitment and spread it outward. We've created a program called it's a portfolio commitment, where people that have large portfolios, universities have many buildings. Certainly Starbucks is one of our prime candidates. Anyone who has multiple buildings that have either the identical footprint or very similar have the ability to rate 2 or 3 of these buildings, and then through an identification process of equal strength, get all the other buildings rated at the same time. so we can save them a lot of money and a lot of cost and a lot of time. People shouldn't have to rate each one of 2,500 stores the same way, if in fact they're all identical footprints, in many of them in similar locations. But we also have great relationships with individual developers and architectural firms and design firms and so forth. So some very, very positive things there. LEED has really been, LEED is the common language. That is what has allowed us a place at the table. That is why we are getting invited to some of the most important meetings around the world. I mentioned to Sam last week that I was invited in to a special briefing by 11 senators up on Capitol Hill. Your senator from Michigan,
Debbie
Savino?
Stavino.
Yeah, that name. She was there. She was convening the process. And invited to the table were the World Resources Institute, Ceres, the president of NYU, Carol Browner, who used to be the EPA administrator under Bill Clinton, and the U.S. Green Building Council. And I have to tell you, I was so excited because someone is hearing our message. And the message is being heard all over the place. President Clinton last July told the international press that there should never be another building built in America that's not LEED rated. And that, again, was a stunning moment for us because we have reached the point where people are starting to associate LEED with what we want it to be. And that is a tremendous building that has financial payoff for the owner, has tremendous opportunity from an environmental perspective, and humans are treated with respect within it. And so that story is being told. Stories every day are popping up. Harvard saying that they can build gold now, LEED gold, without spending a penny more than conventional construction. And Harvard's pretty touchy. They don't want you to use anything with their name on it. And we asked them specifically if we could use this quote, and they said absolutely. They're proud of it. And they did 3 or 4 projects before they got to the point where they felt they could do it for not a penny more. And that's what probably a lot of your experiences have been, that you do have to get a little bit of LEED kind of history and background in order to get it to that point. But those things are happening every day. One of my favorite stories, and I'm so sad that you've got such a good permitting process here in Grand Rapids, because, you know, a lot of cities that don't have good permitting processes have accelerated permitting as a part of what they offer in cities. So if you're building out of a building, you have the ability to build a LEED rated project, and your application goes right to the top of the pile. I went down to Austin, Texas to deliver a LEED Gold plaque to the first Lowe's home improvement store in the country. And as I'm getting out of the car, these 2 executives from Lowe's came over and gave me a big hug. You know, and I said, "Oh, you really love your store, don't you?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, that too." You know, but what they loved was through the accelerating permitting process in Austin, what usually would take them 15 months took them only 3 months. And in doing so, at $8,500 a day profit, they saved over $3 million. The store cost $2.85 million to build. So they ended up getting a free store out of it. And what did Austin, Texas got? They got a big box store, but they got a big box store that uses somewhere between 30 and 60% less energy, 50 to 70% less water. It's an educational magnet for the community, where the people are bringing kids in, and the store kind of teaches them about water use and energy. They have a green section of store elements within there. So it's a real good thing. But you're fortunate to have a good permitting process here in Grand Rapids, but some other cities really need it desperately. What we do with LEED is immediate and measurable. And I don't care where you are, I don't care what member of the press you're talking about. If they ask you about LEED, say, yeah, LEED is immediate and measurable, because that opens up the whole discussion you want to have. It is something that once you're done and you've got your building or your home or your interior space, whatever it is, and the minute that even if it's a hypothetical switch is flipped, that building uses less and provides more on so many different levels. So that's why we use those terms. And I'm not going to go through all of the LEED process. You all know this or you're learning this, but understanding that we have a way of looking at buildings and checking under the hood, maybe for the first time, to look at the way that materials and water and site issues and indoor environmental quality is applied to the scenario. You now have the ability to look at buildings in a whole different way. And ultimately, looking at a whole different way, you have the ability to understand, maybe for the first time, that these buildings perform in a very unique way. And I love it when people say, you know, well, I'm going to build to the LEED rating system, but I'm not going to go for the certification. You know, it's too costly. I'm not going to do that. That's when I pull out my box of animal crackers, because you can buy a $1.39 box of animal crackers, and on the side of the box, it'll tell you how much fat, how much protein, how much carbohydrates, how much sodium is in that box of crackers. And as a consumer, based on your health, based on your values, based on, you know, whatever your purchasing requirements are, you have the ability to choose that or not. But in a building that might be a $90 million building, you don't have that ability. Why would that be? Why would the most expensive purchase or the most expensive thing, all of us, whether it's our houses, our rent, whatever it is, our structures take more of our financial income than anything else? Why wouldn't that be something we would want to know everything about? The reason where that's going to come in very important is this. We know that the buildings use less from an environmental perspective, and that's desperately needed right now. We know the buildings perform better and return more investment to their owners. But what we also have to know, which is so critical, is the human health and productivity aspects of green building. Kids in green buildings perform 20% better on test scores. They're shown to have 28% better reading retention, and they're right now, based on 2 different studies, showing about 40% reduction in respiratory illnesses. Now, when I say that, I'm saying children, but also the teachers are also having that tremendous benefit of less respiratory illnesses as well. Same thing in a hospital setting. There's a number of studies that are showing that people in green hospitals are leaving their beds earlier after a major surgery. And we can go into all the rest of these, but kids in schools and people in healthcare really are something that I'm proud that we have a program that somehow affects them in a positive way. But if you're talking about retail settings, you can bet on increased sales. So the numbers are really all over the place, but we've seen numbers from 7 to 40% increased sales per square foot in any retail setting that's green. And there's a lot of reasons why that's the case. And most of them have to do with how we as humans respond in spaces. If you feel energized and relaxed and healthy, you're probably a lot more willing to part with your hard-earned money than you are if you feel nervous and confined and hot and the toxic smells are killing you. You might decide not to spend that money. You just might want to get out of that store. Green factories increased production rates, higher quality levels, and less incident of workplace injury. And then office worker productivity has been studied since the 1940s with really great results. But if you look at just for a second the test scores and go back to my box of crackers analogy, you're a parent and you're moving into a new school district with your child, okay? You just may want your child to, number one, have a 20% better advantage on test scores, the possibility for better reading retention up to 28%, and incidence of respiratory illnesses reduced by 40%. You might want your child to have the advantage of a teacher that is experiencing that same great green building and benefit, who's going to have a much more vibrant connection with your child, giving them more energy and more ability a better ability to communicate and to work with them. And if in fact that's the case, how do you do that if you don't have a third-party verified structure that is going to tell you without a doubt exactly how that building performs? We have gone way past the point where we trust people to tell us the truth. Nobody does any more, and really no one should. I love one of my favorite little analogies is if we had to have open heart surgery, we're not going to go to a doctor that says, you know, I went to Yale for 11 years and I didn't like my last professor, so I didn't take the final exam. And yeah, I didn't get my degree and I didn't get a license from New York State. But you know what? I know it all. I can do the operation. We're going to run screaming from that room because there's not one of us that would ever allow that to happen. We're not going to buy a can of yogurt that has no expiration date and doesn't tell us what's in it because we want to know that. Those are important decisions for all of us, and certainly whether we're picking a hospital for healing or a school for our children, it's something that we really need to know more about. That's the immediate and measurable end benefit that LEED gives us. Now, when you walk into a school and you've got performance metrics of energy, water, and waste that we see here, that's great. But look at, and I mentioned this today at the LEAD CI training. Thank you. Losing the brain cells right now. But in the LEAD CI training, what I mentioned was the fact that not only do these buildings perform, but they inspire. And having the ability for these spaces, you can picture a little child walking into that classroom on day one and having the classroom kind of be this fun and exciting and just this place that it's not so scary to leave my mom and dad and go do this right now. And this is what we have to remember. We're doing some of the most important work imaginable. We are doing this massive thing relative to climate and environment. We are doing this massive thing relative to economic models that show superior return on investment in changing the world we thought we knew. And we're doing this massive thing when we can affect children's lives and the lives of people healing and put them in positive scenes that just change all of that. I can't imagine doing anything more positive. I mean, I really can't. This is something that I really believe years from now, maybe 100 years from now, someone will look back and say that at a certain point in the 1990s, there was this massive kind of movement or this group that got together. And this is all of us that committed to doing things differently so that all of a sudden we could experience the change that was necessary to guide us further. Looking at these buildings, if you look at the numbers I've orchestrated, for the most part from the top down, they're energy, water, and waste. And I'm only showing them as a quick example to see the kinds of structures and the energy, water, and waste solutions. High-rise residential buildings in Manhattan, laboratories, city environmental centers. This is in Chicago. Lead for Homes, well underway right now with tremendous uptake in the marketplace. This is the first office tower coming out of Lower Manhattan in the Ground Zero footprint. And the Freedom Tower will also be a LEED Gold building. This is a retail setting that's showing tremendous sales per square foot. The retailers don't want to tell you exactly what those sales are because they all think they have a competitive advantage and they all think they're going to outdo their competition, and that's great. And we just want them all to be green, and that way they'll reach a new baseline of consumerism. Here's a wonderful school right here in town with tremendous. Look at the savings of energy and water and waste. Just phenomenal numbers. Convention centers like this one in Oregon, justice centers, interior spaces. This one at Harvard, Vancouver Port Authority offices, architectural firms. It's so nice. I have to digress a second. It is so nice. We started the council in 1993, and we had anecdotal evidence from, what was it, Keith, about 3 buildings in the United States. One was the Audubon House in Lower Manhattan. And we would tell people, this is really going to work, but you got to trust us. And everybody would be like, yeah, look at the time, But now the numbers speak for themselves. We've got the numbers, we've got the case studies, we've got the support, and these numbers are thousands strong. And probably, again, something that I just think is some of the most important is the numbers we're seeing in schools, because the information that comes back is that green schools equal healthy kids, and that's something we're not going to forget. Right now, we have an epidemic of asthma in our youth. The great majority of Americans have this. A lot of our kids have it. I don't think any of us has been to a soccer game ever recently, whether it's our children or grandchildren, and on both sides of the field you see these kids and they're all using their puffers before they can run out on the field. These kids are coming down with an epidemic of childhood asthma. And there was a scientist from Denmark who his name was Ole Fanger. He just passed away recently, but he told me a story a long time ago, and I just have to repeat it because it's one of the most powerful stories I've ever heard. And he laughed based on all his research. He said, you Americans are so funny. He says, when your wife comes home and she says she's pregnant, what's the first thing you do? And I thought for a minute, I said, well, I don't know. And he said, oh, you paint the walls of the bedroom. And then you strip the floor and put down new finishes. And then you go buy new carpet, and then you buy white painted furniture from, you know, some third world country that's off-gassing formaldehyde, and he named 26 other VOCs. And then he said you surround the baby in this crib with all kinds of plastics and more teddy bears, and they're all off-gassing formaldehyde and all these other heavy metals and things. And he goes, and then because you're Americans, you're afraid of everything, and you lock the windows. And he says, you put your baby in the perfect gas chamber. And, you know, I mean, you could have heard a pin drop in the entire room because everybody was like guilty as charged. You know, we think, you know, if we're not creating the perfect Martha Stewart living baby room, that we're bad parents. So that's something we all run out. It's got to be beautiful, plush. I need things hanging all over the place. He's saying no, that's not what they need. They need very sparse environments with natural products, organic fabrics, and fresh air. You know, God forbid we go back to the days where we feel free enough to open our windows. But those are the things that he claimed almost 10 years ago is why children today are suffering unbelievable respiratory illnesses, because those beautiful pink baby lungs that are so clean and so pure are exposed. And we keep them in those baby rooms like the nursery. We keep them there for what, 6 months, 8 months, until they start crawling out. That's, you know, something they're breathing day and night and day and night. And that's part of an epidemic that I think we need to know more about. I don't know if that's the specific answer. I'm not going to presume that it is. I know that there's a smoking gun there we need to be aware of. And we all need to start reading more and educating ourselves more and understanding what kind of role we play in our kids' future. When you talk about schools, this blows me away. 20% of America's population goes to school every day. Between faculty, K through 12 teachers, and our children, 20% of America's population, we spend $35 billion a year in our taxes. This is your taxes and my taxes that we pay. We pay a lot of money for the schools that are built in America, and the great majority of them are barely built to code. They're some of the most horrific designed buildings you could ever imagine. And, you know, then you hear the stories, oh, schools don't have any money. Wait a second. Where'd the $35 billion go? Somewhere along the line, there's a model that's flawed that needs to be corrected, because we need to understand things for the first time. This is something that I wanted to show you because we monitor all the projects that come through the LEED rating system. And if I showed you this slide a year ago, I would have had to show you that there were more green prisons than there were green schools. And that's wrong. And as I mentioned earlier today, it's not that I don't want healthier and more productive inmates, but what I want healthier and more productive kids first. You know, that is really where our priorities need to be, and we need to take them from environments and show them something different. There's a report that the U.S. Green Building Council contributed to, and it was done by Greg Katz in capital E, and there was a number of sponsors: the American Federation of Teachers, the American Institute of Architects, the American Lung Association, the Federation of American Scientists, and the U.S. Green Building Council got together to study. We had 30 green schools out there. We had a couple of years of data on those, and the study came back with some amazing things we knew anecdotally, but now we had real proof behind. This report, by the way, if you don't have a copy already, it's on our website. You can just download it for free, and you should tonight. Energy and water costs, environmental costs, all this stuff going down. But student health and productivity scores, test scores going up. And people always say, you know, is it cost effective? Does it cost us more to do this? And this is the kind of thing that is happening in schools all around the country. This is a classroom in upstate New York. The teachers in this entire wing went to their administration, went to the school board, went to the building manager, and the rooms were so unbelievably hot that kids could not function. Test scores were plummeting. It was an unbelievable thing. So the science teacher used his creativity to create this box system and baffle that dumps all the hot air outside in the middle of winter. So when people say, you know, is it cost effective? The question is this cost effective, realizing, you know, and first of all, this isn't one crazy teacher that did something silly. This is going on in schools all around the country, because you know what? Our teachers are really dedicated people, and they'll do whatever it takes to make sure those kids get help or get the training that they need. A lot of teachers have horrible classrooms. When they go to test their kids on certain subjects, they'll actually take them out of the classroom, march them down the hall to a cafeteria maybe that's got daylight, to an outdoor space if they can do it. Whatever it takes is what teachers are going to try to do for their kids. And what we've got to do is we've got to figure out how to help them. This is one photo I can show you. The other photo I can't show you is another photo. I can't show it to you because in the picture was a child's face. But it was a child drinking from a fountain that was, drinking fountain was down at child height. It was one of the lower ones. And as the child's taking a drink from the fountain, the photo shows a little sign in the background on the fountain saying, with a red circle and a line, "Do not drink lead." So the fountain has lead pipes feeding up to the drinking source. The child, probably the face I saw didn't look like the child could read. I mean, I don't think they were old enough to really read or understand that. And if a child's thirsty, they're going to drink out of a sewer pipe. They really don't care. So having a school district even have that still operating in a place where children can get to it is unconscionable. But things like that happen, and I'm giving you that as emphasis that we've got to just take no prisoners. Get into our schools, get into those meetings, find out what's going on in the classrooms. If teachers need help, anything we can do to help them is important. Each of these schools saved on average $100,000. They didn't cost more. They saved on average $100,000 in direct and indirect costs. And that's the beauty of this whole report. 30 schools did this. All of them LEED rated a 20-to-1 return on investment. So when you hear that story, it costs more. Pull out this report. Show them the support. I'll show you who signed it in a minute. But you know, the scientific evidence behind the children's health benefits. Those are both from reduction of colds and flu and reduction in asthma. The teacher's reduction in sick days, which is so critical because a child's ability to learn and have consistency depends on the relationship with their teacher. You know, if a teacher is sick 4 days out of a week, you know, even if it's just once during the whole year, 4 days, that disruption in the child's kind of momentum forward is enough to set the kids back almost a half a year. And that's not something I made up. My wife's a teacher, and she's been teaching for 20, well, more years than she'd want me to tell you. And she has told me that, you know, she won't take a day off if she can absolutely help it, because the substitute teachers really don't carry forward the lesson plans as you would hope they would, and the children end up suffering. These are immediate and measurable results, and when you talk about the Center for Disease Control and Prevention giving solid testimony to what we've got here, the American Federation of Teachers and the Federation of American Scientists, you know this is a valuable report. And I'm spending this much time on it because I want you all to know it's there, look for it, take it, and do some great work with it. Tell everyone you know. Take that information. This is the beauty of the green building movement at this time. We have information every day that's just unfolding in front of us. And there are times when we get so much information, we just try to get it out to people. We put it on our website. We hope somebody sees it. This report on schools is so important that I'm talking as much as I can specifically about it so that people can, in fact, do it. Now, when you talk about kids, and I'll go back to the kids that are anybody under 30, anybody under 53. These are the kids today. This generation is why, again, I can sleep at night, because they get it. They absolutely understand, and they've got amazing teachers. And some of their teachers are MTV, and some of their teachers are the internet, and some of their teachers are rock groups and bands that have messages that permeate their culture and allow them to look at the world in a different way than we did. McGraw-Hill did a study of that population of young teenagers who are purchasing things, and they're finding that these kids today are very dedicated with the way they spend money and their ability to influence corporations and activities based on their purchasing power. And you know what? They want to support organizations that have the right values. They want to support organizations that believe like they do and care about the environment and care about animals and care about, you know, things that we sometimes, because of their age, discount their ability to cause change, but they can cause big-time change, and they are causing big-time change. That's what is great about the activities we're seeing today. We each have to take that changeability upon us. We have to see what we can do differently. The U.S. Green Building Council is actually making a very strong stand against climate right now. And we tried to figure out last year, we spent about a half of the year before Green Build figuring out what our plan was. First plan is we're going to put a 50% mandatory reduction in the LEED rating system. So you won't have to do the math to figure out at a certain point when a particular project you must reduce off of a particular baseline, you must reduce CO2 generation by X amount, X percent. If you're building a LEED rated project, that will be done for you through the criteria, through the credits. You won't have to worry about that. Two of the energy and optimization credits that were optional, we're taking away that option. We're saying they must be prerequisites, they must be done. And this is a way that we can drive that process of energy efficiency and CO2 reduction through the LEED rating system. Right now, if you do a LEED certified core and shell and a certified new construction project, you get your big plaque, we will automatically, for free, put you into the LEED existing building program. And what that does is that basically says when you get that plaque, it's not the end of the journey, that's the beginning of the journey. So how are you going to operate your building over time? How are you going to maintain that performance over time so that we know that that 40% reduction in CO2 is there in year 3 and 4 and 5 and 10, and make sure that there's that continuous improvement. I made a decision that last year that we are going to offer LEED Platinum certifications for absolutely free, and we're doing them right now. I've paid the bill for about 7 of them so far this year, and it's really great. You know, this is the one I mentioned at Greenbuild, and I said, I dare you all to put us out of business. Because this is, if we can incentivize the market to go to platinum, and let's say somebody doesn't get there, but they fall to the gold level. Well, you've got a really nice performing building at the gold level. They may have only intended early on to go to the certified level, but we, through the free platinum, pull them all the way up to gold. I think that's a really win-win for all of us. Everybody in the chain gets that benefit. USGBC is also right now working on a very, I won't lie to you, this is a very complicated program because everybody and their brother claims they have the answer to it. And I've looked at 4 global firms around the world right now that say they have the answer, and their answers are all different. So I'm kind of confused. But we are working towards a program where the differential between baseline energy performance and LEED certification gives you a tradable carbon product. So that 40%, if that turned into 30 tons of carbon, that you as the building owner would in fact own those 30 tons of carbon to trade. And there will be, this is absolutely going to happen. There are going to be formal trading organizations in the future. Right now it could be as important as the New York Stock Exchange. But there will be trading organizations that are monitoring and capturing those carbon credits and the associated net worth value with those. And what we're trying to do is if we can incentivize the green building market to know what that variation is, know that you will own those credits, you might just get the people that say, why would I build certified? I want to go up to the platinum level because I'm going to get that many more carbon credits that I can bank and someday use for other purposes. And that's a long-term proposition, but it's something we're working on. And USGBC as an organization will be carbon neutral by the end of this year, 2007, which we're really excited about. And I'm more excited about the fact that we're doing it in which I consider the right way. This is our new headquarters in Washington, D.C. It's a LEED Platinum fit-out of a LEED Gold NC building. And I don't necessarily like it when people say they're going carbon neutral and they buy all the credits. Just because you have money in the bank, you're not learning anything and you're not teaching anything if you're just buying the credits to call yourself carbon neutral. That is, in a way, a greenwash experience that people shouldn't do. Some organizations don't have any choice, and if that's the way they choose to do it, that's fine. But if you have the choice and you have the ability to change the way you live, change the way you purchase, change the way you travel, change all of those things, then you've got some real positive momentum. Chicago is so close to you all here. I expect to see every one of you in Chicago. And I have to tell you, right now we're looking at 20,000 people. They are saying it could be as high as 25,000 people. With a little bit of luck, President Clinton, who 3 of his handlers have committed that he will be there on opening day to give the opening plenary. That will be a very exciting transition year for us and this movement and our collective voice. So Chicago is going to be a pretty exciting thing. And thank you for all your patience. This is my last slide, second to last slide. But I did a talk at Yale not too long ago, and at the end of my talk, this student came up, and they have a new building on campus. It's a LEED-rated dormitory, I believe. And the student came up and he said, Mr. Federici, I've just got to tell you, this building is phenomenal. It's just the performance. I can study all night, and I'm never tired, and I go to sleep. I feel great because it's so cool. It's kind of like an iPod. And I realized at that moment in time that as an adult, there is no greater compliment you can be paid by a kid than to have for them to tell you anything you do or touch is like an iPod. To me, it was like a supreme compliment. So it was probably one of the most important days of my life personally. I know we've reached a new generation of practitioners and people that have ideas and will bring us to the next level pretty soon, and I hope so because we're all getting tired. So I want to thank you very much for your attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there's any. Do you have time for that or no? Are we done? Oh, we're moving on. But thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. When I said kids, I meant that with all respect. I can say that because I have one in the audience here, and she's probably ducking under one of the tables right now. But look around you, and these kids deserve respect. This is really good work. We should really be proud of them. Give them a hand. We're moving on to the last phase of the program here, and we're going to make the awards. And I know a few students sitting in the audience that have been waiting for this for a long time, and their hearts are probably thumping a little bit loud, you know. So I want to talk a little bit about the process. We had here we go. We had 5 judges judging the competition. We had, with 17 entries, there was an awful lot for them to go through. And on top of that, we raised the degree of difficulty by making this a LEED EB project, and which is quite different than LEED for new construction or CI. So it took some education on the part of the judges to get up to speed on it, but also an understanding that LEED EB is a process and not an event. So that was, I think, when we look at the projects that we're going to see at National, we're probably going to be in a whole separate category just because what we've done is really outside of the box. Our judges for this competition were Teresa Hugerheid-Rusch of Rusch Design Services and Catalyst Partners, Steve Hamstra of GMB Architects and Engineers, Nate Gillette of Bazzani Associates, Jeff Remtema of Progressive Architects and Engineers, and Mike Corby of Integrated Architecture. And I can say that all of them were instrumental in helping to get this chapter up off the ground and get us to this evening tonight. And we owe them a debt for their great contribution to the chapter. Rick, if you can come up here a minute, I'm going to go ahead and announce the winners. And not all of them could be here tonight. We have 2 honorable mentions, and if the team is in here that I mentioned, come on up, please, and we're going to present this to you. The first one is from Kendall Ferris, Green Horizon team. We have him here? All right. Kind of upside down, I think. Okay.
That is
Green Horizon?
Green Horizons.
Green Horizons, great.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Green Horizons, great. Great, thank you very much. The Second honorable mention, also from Kendall Ferris, the Cradle Rockers. What? Oh, Cradle to Cradle, of course.
There you go. Congratulations. You're welcome. Congratulations.
Third prize from Andrews University. Well, they don't have a team name. I think it was 485, class 485. So do we have a Tom? Yeah, come on up from Andrews University.
Is that one of these?
Yes, that will be this one.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. Here you go, Tom. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's great.
Be very happy, please.
Second prize, not here tonight, is Michigan Tech, and I have to tell you, this team was put together by a young man who was really swimming upstream to get this adopted at his university, and I hope that by virtue of what they've accomplished tonight, that it will become an integral part of their program. So we have Michigan Tech. The first prize, I will ask Ryan Garone to come on up here.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Ryan, congratulations. I have to tell you, I've been biting my tongue. I know Ryan, and I'm very proud to know him because I think he's one of the bright stars in this area, certainly. We've been working together on a project, so it's been all I could do to keep from telling you, yeah, you did it. But we're really so pleased for him, and we hope to be able to take him to Chicago with us in a biodiesel bus, right? We're all going on a bus. And Ryan, the best of luck to you in the national competition, and we're really proud of you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right, now that I know that